Hello, everyone, and welcome to another lovely episode of Live from the Blue Seats. This is producer JL coming at you today with two people who you may or may not have heard of before if you are perennially online or visit the blog or the website. Joined with us here today, it's not Dave. Dave, this is probably Dave's worst nightmare. Joined on the podcast today. You guys can laugh, it's okay. Joined with me today is Russell Hartman at RustyHart38 on Twitter. He is a contributor to Blue Sea Blogs as well, and also Mr. Tyler McGillick at Rangers Recap 9393. He is the guy who writes the recaps for you almost every single game if he's not out trying to kill a boar with his bare hands. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great, bud. How are you?
Good. Tyler?
And I am doing well as well.
So just to preface when I say that Tyler's killing a boar with his bare hands. Oh, and before I go on, I just want to say we're recording this as the Islanders-Rangers game is going on. UC Parsonen just scored. It's 5-0 Rangers.
Oh, my.
You know, leave it to them to basically, when they're mathematically eliminated. Well, not technically,
Almost.
they're not, sure.
Almost.
But leave it to them when they're basically hanging on by one finger off the edge of the cliff to finally start putting it all together, right?
Right. But before we go on, I just want to say the reason why I say that Tyler can kill a boar with his bare hands, because one, as Dave has alluded to many times on this podcast, Tyler is a very tall gentleman. And two, he has a very big sort of brawny beard, and he lives out, in the boonies, as I like to call it. I won't say where, but, so I'm assuming he's probably killed an animal or two. And yeah, so anyways, your rebuttal, Tyler.
Nothing. No, that's about it.
I do feel like everyone that reads the blog, everyone that interacts with us, we all owe a debt of gratitude to Tyler this year.
Yes,
for
we do.
having the gall to sit through all of the garbage that we saw on the ice this year.
Exactly.
And write these recaps and somehow pick up the energy to watch this nonsense that's been on the ice all season. So I applaud Tyler for his resiliency, number one. Couldn't be me.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, no, it has not been fun. It has definitely not been fun.
I will say though, I love the reactions in the chat whenever the games go on, especially when things are going on. It's just like, Tyler, you are the definition of the it's over meme, and then also we back up meme with from The Wire. You're the perfect definition of that. I love it. Right?
It's like Galaxy Brain meme.
Yeah, it is. And then Russell is kind of I like to joke about with some of our friends that, and I don't know if I've ever actually told you this, Russell, but I'll tell you right now, it's not a bad thing. It's like Russell's a Sith Lord. Russell likes to speak in absolutes, and it's absolutely hilarious.
Oh
yeah. We're all really big Star Wars fans. Or at least I am, and Russell is. I'm not.
I am too. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I love
Yep. So we like to say that Russell speaks in absolutes because it's cool. It's at least you know where he's at. Yeah, there's no gray area with Russell, and I love it.
So,
Look. Before they got JT Miller, it was over. For a week or two when they got JT Miller, we were ready for the 2012 Kings run. Then it was over again.
I mean, I think it's a little more than a week. I'd probably say a month and a half.
Sure. Okay, it didn't feel like that, but I'll
it was 12 games?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, just maybe a little bit more than that. I'm more of an optimist because I guess we'll jump right into it. I'm more of an optimist, so I saw a lot of what of them trying to actually be better than they were, because like Tyler, I watched a lot of the games, and I have to for the podcast, of course. Also, I'm just a maniac. But they
live at the Garden. Call it what it is. Live at the Garden.
Well, yeah, that is also true. Yes, I am a season ticket holder. I'm actually, if they don't make the playoffs, I'm actually kind of happy that the rate won't go up. which is kind of nice. But I guess just to jump into it, boys. So I guess I'll start off because I do have some thoughts, especially from the night before. So we're just gonna so this podcast I came up with this idea at the Garden, when it was brought up that you guys wanted to be on. And there was a couple other people who are interested in just like venting as well. The next couple episodes, unless something drastic happens, or it'll probably just be a little bit of a venting session, so to speak. Um, all of us are really frustrated. Truth be told, this has been a very disappointing season. It has had a couple of little nice highs here and there. Matt Rempe's played a lot better. Igor has somewhat looked a bit better. Jonathan Quick. You can name some of the positives, but it's just really the season didn't start off on a good foot, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And if you listen to a lot of what the guys say in the pre and post game, or at least the post game comments after a big loss, they always like to emphasize snowball. And it really all started in the summer when the Rangers were trying to make the team better, and they decided to openly shop Jacob Trouba, and they had a deal in place, and he nixed it. So that left a bad taste in their mouth. Camp comes in, he just decides to get a sourpuss. That kind of snowballed. Lindgren probably not helping out too with this, the whole not playing well. And then it just kind of snowballed. Oh, the Barclay Goodrow thing too. Let me not forget about that. So this whole season kind of had a sour taste. They pulled the defense. They were just. It was just a very strange situation. Kako gets traded because you would definitely tell you didn't want to be here. And fine, I get it. Roster turnover happens. GM's trying to make changes. This kind of stuff. My problem, and the thing that kills me the most, is the lack of effort. Look, I know you have comments about Chris Drury. You guys will have comments on Peter Laviolette. I know Tyler will because I think Tyler probably has it at this point. But I will say this though: while Drury and Laviolette are definitely part, or at least have contributed to the problem, 93% of the issue here are the players. That's what kills me the most. This is a very pro-player podcast. Dave will tell you this, Rob will tell you this, Becky will tell you this. Anyone who listens to this podcast will tell you that this is a very pro-player podcast. They are the ones who shot themselves in the foot with their lazy efforts, their lack of care on the ice, and just the overall lethargicness on the ice. It is their fault. And that's the frustrating thing. Because if you look at the defensive breakdowns, you look at the, less than stellar shift, you look at the way that they react after games. Like, look, you went to the Garden yesterday, because we're recording this the day after they lost to the Flyers. You see them warming up. They look like they just wanted to get it over with already. And you're technically still in the playoffs, and this is what you show up with. A bunch of people coming to games for the first time, or people who spend their money to go there, who travel to go see them. And that's what you put out. That's the most frustrating part to me. Now, they had a little bit of a jump when JT Miller came in, and you could see they have a little bit more of a step in their game because Miller's a little bit more abrasive than Filipino, which, by the way, I just want to say, I hope the best for the kid. He had another injury with Vancouver, and I hope he's able to come back and live a normal life and stuff like that hurt. But it's just you're getting paid millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to skate and play game on the ice, right? I'm not saying that you have to completely throw yourself into the fire, but show me you care. That's been my main problem. It's the inconsistent effort. Even tonight, as I'm sitting here watching, they're up 5-0 against the Highlanders. Because you know what? As much as this may be useless, the heck with the Highlanders. Because people, what the heck is in Long Island anyway? Grass and sand. But who likes the Islanders anyway? But my problem is like this is the perfect example of it. You're playing a Flyers team that's basically out of it, and they look like Swiss cheese on defense. And then now they're up 5-0 against an objectively better team. What is going on? I don't understand it. Another example. I'll say this. They played Edmonton on a Sunday. And this is probably the highest pitch my voice has ever been on this podcast, and I'll hear you guys talk. A lot. I'm very frustrated, and mind you, like I said, I'm the optimist here. They played Edmonton on a Sunday, like in March. They looked like gangbusters. Just the defending Western Conference champions. They held McDavid basically in check until he took his one shot of the game and it went in because it's Connor McDavid after all. So I can't get too mad about that. So it's like, okay, the next game I had tickets for, they played Calgary. They dropped the dud. It's like they didn't even pretend to care if they were there. And then they played Toronto, which you were at that game, Russ, and they dropped the dud on that one too. And then the following Saturday, even though they wasn't their best effort, they beat the Canucks. So that's been my problem all season is that they just, I'm not saying it's going to be a lack of effort, because they're going to play, but it's very lazy, lethargic stuff on the ice where the play isn't consistent. And look, you can blame the coaching, you can blame the GM, but at the end of the day, you can't fire, a whole roster of players. It's their fault. And that's what upsets me. That's what really grinds my gears. But anyways, so your thoughts. I'm going to first start with Tyler. So Tyler, just take a rip at it. What are you feeling about this team right now?
So, I mean, I'll kind of piggyback off you. I will have some rebuttal on like the player side. I mean, I think it's more of like a 60-40 split because yes, the players quit for that stretch of November to when did Trouba get dealt? Like December.
Trouba got dealt in sometime in November. It was when they played the Penguins. It was around that week. I can't remember.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
But
I went to the game. I went to the game the day he was traded. So I think it was, I believe it was December. But anyway, so I mean, players, the players let the business side affect their on ice performance, which of course inexcusable because like you said, that's what the money's for. This is why they're paid the way they are. You cannot, absolve Laviolette from blame, in my opinion, because he is the coach. Yes, players have captains and leadership and all that, but Laviolette being the coach and the ultimate leader of the team, I think a true leader in that regard reins in his 20 present skaters and says, okay, like enough of your moaning. You have to buy in again. And whether he did try to do that and the team just the message was in one year out the other, I guess we'll truly never know because it's not like we are on the beat and in the room. But I mean, I think the results kind of speak to them for themselves that that's potentially what happened because Laviolette has in the media scrum said he's preaching what he wants them to do and they're not doing it. So I don't know, I get it's hard to rein in 20 diverse personalities and all that, but I don't think you can totally absolve coaching from their part in the way the season has gone.
No, that's fair. I definitely understand that, and you're right. They're definitely not completely absolved of the situation. They have to figure out a way to try to get the most out of their players, and they didn't do it this year. But also too, just to kind of touch on that. It's kind of like, I mean, I don't have kids. I mean, I'm sure you can understand this, Tyler. It's like you can tell your kids so much, and sometimes they just don't listen. But obviously, it's a bit different with a parent than being saddled with a bunch of overpaid crybabies that are making millions of dollars. But no, you're absolutely right because at least in the sense of with Laviolette and trying to get the room together, I think you can tell by just looking at him. He looks exhausted. So maybe he's trying to
pissed.
Right. So
he looks pissed. He looks like a guy who's like, you morons, listen to me.
Right. And it's a big tonal difference from the previous season where he looked a little bit more sure of things. But now you see him going up and talking about things, especially after big losses, especially after, times where things have snowballed. And he just looks like he's just frustrated. So while I'm not going to completely absolve, and I agree with you that coaching does have to help out with it, the players got to do something after a bit, And also, I just want to go ahead and just say that a lot of coaches don't go into the room after games, so I think that's kind of overblown. But
Yes,
anyway,
yes, that was
so
definitely disputed the last couple of days.
yeah. So, anyways, Russell, what's on your mind?
All right, so I'm actually going to start off with some baseball here.
Okay.
So I
I
am
had a feeling he was going to throw a Mets reference in there
I'm
somewhere.
throwing some Mets in here, and yes, for those listening, I'm a huge Mets fan, just like Mr. JL is here. Tyler
Boo,
unfortunately hangs
boo.
out with those within the dirty Bronx, but that's okay.
Tyler, I'm going to mute you for
Um,
saying that.
but last season, the New York Mets started out 0-5, right? As Gary Cohen said during that fifth game, this feels like rock bottom. It was up to the players to turn it around, and they had that famous players only meeting led by their shortstop, Francisco Lindor, talking about what they had to do, what each member of that team had to do to buy in to get this season turned around and to not have a repeat of 2023. And as New York fans know, and as most of the baseball world knows, and most of the world knows because of that amazing run they went on, where they ended up two in short basically of going to the World Series. They figured it out. And the New York Rangers let their snowballing go the exact opposite way this season. This for me started in the summer. I Since the sixth grade, I've been into hockey more than any other sport. I've written more articles about hockey than I've written about any other sport. I've listened to more things on hockey, watched more things about hockey, but this season just felt very different. Whether it was the lack of movement in the summer from the trades that were never completed, whether that was Larry Brooks's fault for leaking it in the post, that's neither here nor there. But whether the trades that weren't completed, whether it felt like you just got mashed in the face by another Florida team in the Eastern Conference Final and still not enough was done, the vibes going into the season just felt off for me. And this was the first time in probably all my years of hockey fandom where I just didn't feel that magical feeling going into the season. It just felt like this team who basically got punched in the mouth by the Panthers, despite what that series looked like being not a sweep, of course, but it just felt like not enough was done to add the right kinds of players in and ship guys out. Was that done during the season? Sure. But I really feel like more, and again, no trade clauses, no movement clause, these types of things factor into it. But I really feel like more should have been done in the summer to just get this done so it didn't drag on into the season. And a big problem with this is two of the most successful franchises in the entire league, two of the model franchises, you can say, despite how some people might feel about both of them, are the Vegas Golden Knights and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And what do these two teams do consistently that we always see them being successful? Players come in, players come out, and the culture of these teams is so good and so ingrained that when these players come in and out, even if they're stars, it doesn't adjust what happens to the team on the ice. They adapt, they push forward. They realize, okay, we got new soldiers in here. Let's go win the war with these new guys. These are the guys we're standing shoulder to shoulder with now, right? The Tampa Bay Lightning let Steven Stamkos walk away. The Vegas Golden Knights trade players back and forth like they're, simply put, like expendable as expendable can be. And we're not just talking about random guys. Like Riley Smith has been back and forth. Steven Stamkos, as I said before, he was like the captain he was allowed to walk away. The Golden Knights will trade anyone at the drop of a hat if it means they can fix their cap situation or get a little better. We're always seeing Yanni Gord is now back on the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're always seeing guys basically get acquired, reacquired, whatever it might be to fix the team around to essentially get them to a higher level. Never in my life did I think that this team, this core of players, would fall apart because Barclay Goodrow threw a temper tantrum and got shipped off to San Jose. Or Jacob Trouba throws a tantrum and they ship him to Anaheim. And what would happen, or what should happen in the situation? Okay, boys, these guys are gone. Let's fix this. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with these new guys. Let's figure it out. And the problem is, they let their emotions get in the way here. And I understand being upset if your friends are traded, if you were close to guys. I get all that. We saw Henrik Lundqvist cry when Matt Zuccarello was traded years ago, but did that stop Hank from playing to the level that we know he could play at? No, it didn't. But these guys, it's seemingly they've taken everything so personal. And then already when the season doesn't get started off on the right foot, guys aren't playing well. And, the whole Goodrow thing happens in the summer with the waivers to get him out of here. The Trouba stuff drags in. It just seems like this team didn't have the mental fortitude to figure it out, to get past these kinds of moves that the teams in the upper echelon of the league have figured out. Guys are going to come and go. Guys aren't always going to be on the team, and sometimes the breakup isn't going to be the smoothest. But you are paid the money you are paid to play in the National Hockey League, to win games, and put aside those feelings and do what is best for your franchise. And somewhere along the way this year, part of what frustrated me so much, you want to talk about like what these guys are saying, lack of effort, lack of emotion, what felt like lack of pride so many times this year. If you're going to lose games, but I see the effort, I'm still going to give you my time. If it's a rebuild and we're bringing in young guys like we did a few years ago when we were starting this build to where we are now, I'm going to watch because we're getting new talent in. We're getting this injection of energy in. We're getting this new vibe fitting in. So I'm going to watch even if the results aren't what they are. But this season, if you're going to go out there on the ice and for flat out some games just look frankly just non-interested, just look like there's no competition, no heart, no oomph, no energy. If you're not going to give that to us, and we pay our hard-earned money at our jobs that we spend all our time at, to go buy a seat at Madison Square Garden, to go buy a beer, to go buy food, to spend our money on jerseys, hats, shirts, whatever it might be, why in the hell should we do all of that when the product that's on the ice is not being reciprocated to us at all? And it's just so frustrating to me that at the end of the day, we see these other teams, like I mentioned, figure it out. Teams that go through teams that have gone through even worse things than us. And these players seemingly, and the part that makes me so angry is that out of all the teams I've ever rooted for, all the seasons I've been in, again, I'm a Giants fan too, so I've dealt with all that crap the past few years. Okay. Needless to say, being a Mets fan hasn't been fun minus the last few years, obviously. And excuse me, as a Knicks fan, until Leon Rose got here, it was tough as well. I've had my fair share of pain in my sports fandom, but I have never, ever in my life flat out disliked or hated a team as much as I have this year, just based on seeing this disgusting lack of effort night in and night out from this team. And what makes it worse is that there were games where they looked like they could be world beaters, especially after the JT Miller trade was made, which, by the way, was probably one of the only fun and good things they did this year, because that guy brought exactly what this team needed into it: emotion, spark, toughness, going in on the forecheck, hitting guys, energy. A lot of people didn't want him back, and I understand the reasons why. But that's the kind of guy you need in this room, right? And at the end of the day, look, they might be beating the Islanders now. Great. But where was this the entire season? And it's not fair to all of the people that spend their time writing about the team, podcasting about the team, spending their money on this team, doing everything they can to show their fandom for this team, and basically getting spit back at in the face by this team all season. And I cannot wait until that mathematically eliminated tweet goes up, because honestly, this team does not deserve to be in the playoffs this year, and major changes better be coming this summer, starting with, and I know it's not entirely his fault, but the coach needs to go. And that's where I'll stop for now until I respond to one of you guys. But just tough season all around. And it's disgusting seeing what they put out on the ice this year, especially from some of these guys that are making pretty high AAVs.
No, listen, I'm with you 100%. You know, like you bring up a good point about the Vegas Golden Knights and the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know, you look at what happened with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And feel free to interject whenever you guys have a thought, guys. Well, this is the discussion, I guess, part of the podcast now. You mentioned a very good thought about the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights. Tampa Bay Lightning, what was it? I think it was 2019, the year or the season or two before they won their consecutive Stanley Cups. They got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets in the first round when they had, up until when the Bruins broke that record, they had the best regular season record in NHL history, if I'm saying that right. And they got absolutely embarrassed. And what did they do? The team didn't just falter away. The franchise made the moves they needed to make. And what ended up happening? They won 2 Stanley Cups. The thing that also frustrates me the most, and I guess this is sort of one of the reasons why I'm not mentioning Chris Drury too much. Granted, he's, from what Dave has mentioned, that he's not exactly a good communicator with the players. But at the end of the day, the thing that I can give Drury at least is his attempt to try and fix the team, at least on the fly. And he acknowledges there are a lot of problems with this team. One thing that people have to remember too is, while we are, some people, I'm not saying you guys, just generally are like online talking about the good times we had with Gordon Davidson. Look, there were a lot of positives. They drafted a lot of decent talent. They also missed a lot of good talent. They drafted a lot. They got a lot of good depth players on his team, and they also missed out a lot of good depth. But one of the things that we're really kind of suffering from currently, and it's just the fact that the locker room that has been in place for such a long time, it's essentially this sort of business-like, soft, sort of non-emotional locker room. Now that's not to say that that's what you need all the time, but it could help this group of players, you know, in some form or another. Somebody who can go in the room and make a ruckus. Now, why do you? Let me ask you. Let me throw this out here. Why do you think the team was so good in 22 when they made it to the conference final?
Well,
Obviously, they had a lot of young talent, but
yeah.
that locker room was the epitome of vibes. And why do you think that's the case? And I think you guys know where I'm going with this.
Because there was the end of David Quinn.
Well,
Oh,
that's one. That definitely one. But that's no. Trust me, that's definitely part of it. But but if
well,
you think about
okay.
it, though,
As we saw when they made the conference final against Florida, right? The MO with that team was they felt like they were never out of it. They felt like all of last season, it felt like, okay, even if it's a 2-goal deficit, 3-goal deficit, the pushback was always there. And maybe they didn't always get over the hump. Maybe they did lose some of those games. But you always felt like with that team, there was never a case of the lack of effort being there. There was always effort from that team. It seemed like the players were picking each other up whenever they needed that hand to pick them up from wherever they were at, right? And it just seems this season there wasn't really that one guy or two guys to kind of have that rallying cry to get
Mhm.
them to have that energy to bring guys up. And, where does that start with your leaders, right? Well, the
Mhm.
captain was embroiled in this entire trade saga since early July that never went away despite all the quotes in the media between Drury, Truba, whoever else was talking about it. The whole, New York's where I want to be. Sure, buddy. Sure it was. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
But
right.
like all of that nonsense that got carried over into the season, the team couldn't figure out how to beat the noise back, essentially.
No,
They couldn't
and if
figure
you
out how to they couldn't figure out how
right.
to focus on themselves and like block it all out.
Well, you know who
And
was really good at that in 22, which is the point I was going to make, is Ryan Reeves. People don't realize how much of an impact Reeves had in terms of just that locker room, you know? And, you know, I mean, Gerard Gallant was not a player's coach, contrary to popular belief. He just didn't police his players like a Laviolette would normally, or like a David Quinn. And, you know, he let the players do what they want, and it turned out to be okay. Granted, things didn't shape out much better after the second season he was coach, but you know, they were missing something in that locker room. Now, whether or not JT Miller is going to be that guy next season. Obviously, Vincent Trocheck is probably one of the few, even though he's made a lot of lazy plays. Yeah, he also has a broken finger.
Well, also
Um,
he's hurt and
yeah,
probably shouldn't even be playing anymore. I would
shouldn't
have
even
shut
be
him down a
playing
little
because he's
while
still
ago.
in a
Yeah,
brace.
Yeah.
yeah. When they showed him on the bench yesterday, and that brace was clear as day. It's like, why are you playing? Now, granted, he scored a beauty of a goal last night. I will give him that. I will give him credit for that. But that it has not been the Trocheck of last season for
No,
sure.
No,
definitely not. It
no.
hasn't been. And honestly, it just seems like this year we can say that about so many of these guys. It hasn't been the guy from last year. What the hell happened to Alexis Lafreniere after he signed that contract this year?
Who
Like,
knows?
yeah, like
Yeah.
what? Why did he suddenly become a ghost again? Like Trocheck, as we just mentioned, that playing hurt now, obviously, but also laziness all over the ice, right? Um,
Mhm.
Ryan Lindgren before he got traded,
He was
thank you
playing
for your
hurt.
service here, but my God, brutal,
He
like
was playing hurt.
brutal stuff out there on a
Adam
daily
Fox.
basis.
Adam
Yeah,
Fox is another one playing hurt.
Adam Fox hasn't looked himself. Keandre Miller's been a headache the entire season. I mean,
Carson Soucy is the slowest skater I have ever seen in my
Well,
life.
yeah, it's terrible, and like it's really something to say when you look at what makes up this defense core. That like Will Borgen is like the most solid, steady player out of this entire defense core, right? For somehow, um,
well, I will
and
say this I will say this in the defense of Borgen, and Rob alluded to this. Will Borgen um, has been fine, and they needed
yeah,
that.
he does his
Will
job. He
Yeah.
does his job.
he does his job, and he looks a lot better here than he does with Seattle. You also have to remember too that he's also kind of having to pick up for a lot of what Keandre Miller messes up, and I
Oh,
think also
sure.
too,
Yeah,
Keandre,
absolutely.
Keandre to me, and I just want your guys' thoughts on this too. I'm just like Keandre and a couple other players.
Yeah, yeah, of
Keandre
course.
Miller to me is probably, I don't want to call him an enigma, but it is probably the most confusing case of a highly skilled player I've ever seen, because you know he has all this skill in the world, but just some of the decisions that he makes, it's just incredibly bonehead. And Dave makes this point, which it is true, because Braden Schneider technically has more turnovers and more giveaways than he does. But Keandre Miller could have a great game, right? He'll have a great game. He'll make one mistake. It turns over into something, and then it spitballs into like 3 bad games.
Right.
And my issue is, at least when it comes to Borgen, is that at the time when they made the trade, they needed stability on that back end, right? And Borgen kind of gave them that. So did Vakanainen too. Those two guys are perfect depth defensemen because they're playing a very quiet game. They play a very, easy game. And statistically on paper, this is the funny part about all this. Statistically and analytically, this current team that's on the ice right now, or that's currently put together on paper, is actually better than the team last season. But what are they missing? They're missing sort of that
But you
energy.
see, you just said it right there.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
paper, right? On
Right.
paper. It has to translate. And for whatever
Correct.
reason, almost every single key player on this New York Rangers team this year decided that we were all going to be bad at once. And like, you can deal with if one or two guys are having an off season, and a lot of NHL teams deal with that on a year-to-year basis. You're going to have one or two guys that aren't having
It's
a
almost
year.
everybody.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the problem in here lies is that if you go through the top six, or what should have been the top six of this team, Chris Kreider, miserable year.
Oh, jeez.
And
Miserable,
he's another.
miserable year.
He is another injured player though. That we like. It's all but confirmed.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is true. But
Yeah,
also just to touch on Kreider though, I will say this though, um, even before the injury, he did not look this. He did not look
he doesn't
like
look
his usual
engaged.
self.
He doesn't look
No,
engaged. Yeah.
no.
And do you know what's so sad about it too? This is a player who has spent his entire career with this organization, was almost, the organization, and look, some people call me wrong for saying this, but when Kreider wasn't traded at that deadline years ago, they basically made the decision then they were keeping him over Buchnevich. You can only hand out one of those wing contracts to one of them at the time, and Kreider was the one that was chosen. Hindsight is 2020. You can't be, their careers have both been pretty decent since that point, but at the end of the day, this is a legacy player, right? This is a player who's been here his entire career, wasn't traded here, was brought up as soon as his season ended when he was playing in Boston, right? Scores big goals in the 2012 playoffs when he gets brought up. And he's someone that should be celebrated at every turn. And the way this season has gone, the way that he has acted this season, the way the wheels fell off, we could be seeing we are almost 100% certain seeing the final games of this guy in a Rangers uniform, and almost nobody gives a shit.
Right.
And that is crazy to think that we've gotten to this point with so many of these guys. How much has this Rangers fandom bought in and loved Mika Zibanejad over the years that he's been here since that trade? And this year, whatever it's been, this is including myself. I don't understand what this player has done this year. I don't understand why he's looked the way he's looked. I don't know where that player who we've had the last few seasons has gone. And yeah, has he ever been the analytical darling? No. A lot of these guys have not been. But they've made up for it with their scoring acumen, with their work on the power play, with the effort to the ice. And we've seen none of that. And like the one guy in the top 6 this year that's been doing what he's supposed to do is the bread man.
Artemi Panarin.
And like he can't do it himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all just going back to this. Like I said, you can deal with a guy or two having a bad year. But look at all these names we're saying. Miller, Fox, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Kreider, Zibanejad. Dude, it's everybody. Like this summer, what I would, because it appears that Drury's not going to go anywhere, and that Laviolette is going to be the one that is going to take the blame. Which, okay, sure, we need to change the coaching,
that, but whatever.
But we need, like, if I'm Drury, I'm telling all these guys, take like a week or two off, empty your brains, and come back with a new attitude so we can figure this out. And we don't know what the roster turnover is going to look like. We have no idea exactly what teams he's going to communicate with, what trades he's going to try to think to do, what signings. But whoever's here next year, you better come here with a different attitude, because if this repeats again, I have no idea what message you even send to the group at that point. And again, this team needs a new captain. Call me crazy. Slap that on JT Miller. Seriously. Who else at this point is showing that they even deserve to have a letter on their chest besides that guy?
Will Cooley.
Will Cooley, that's
okay,
another one.
I agree. Yes.
Okay. Will Cooley. Vincent Trocheck to a degree.
100%.
I'll slap an A on him.
Yeah,
you know, because he's done pretty well.
I am remiss that I didn't mention that despite how the rest of the team has looked, Will Cooley has been a revelation this year. Give me a team full of guys like Will Cooley and I'll be thrilled.
Yes.
Thank you, Elias Anderson.
Russ, while you were talking about Buch and Kreider, I pulled up their stats. So since Buchnevich has been in St. Louis, he has scored 260 points, and then Kreider in the same time has had 231. So just like kind of like what you were saying, like they made their choice, and
they made their choice.
You wonder if Kreider is healthy this year, if he would still be about that pace too. Like, there's no way he's like. I'm looking at like it's just crazy having the hockey reference page up. Like, Kreider's a -9 this year. Like, he's rarely in his entire career here ever been a minus player. Like,
he's always been a good defensive forward too.
Yeah, it's just wild. It's wild what has happened this year with him.
Now, I will say this though, just to kind of touch on the Buchnevich thing a little bit, and this is kind of like a plea to everybody online. Can we please stop talking about that trade? Honestly, can we stop? Because no, honestly,
if I'm being honest with both of you, I've had Buch and Buchnevich muted on Twitter for years at this point.
Listen, look, I should do that too, honestly, because you know why? Look, and this is my reasoning for it. Look, again, I'm not trying to hail Chris Drury as this hero, but one of the things that I give him credit for is being proactive, and that's something that Jeff Gordon was not doing. That's not to say that I'm going to completely crap all over Jeff Gordon here, but you know, with the way that the team was constructed. And look, you can't and look, plus you can't anticipate 2 top round picks completely Well, I don't want to say completely fallen through yet because I still think Lafreniere still has potential. But 2 first-round picks that have underperformed, you can't predict that. You
Right.
know,
And you
they,
can't be mad at the picks because
because
consensus-wise,
you're not
any
gonna right.
any
Exactly.
team that was put in that position would
Would
have
make the
taken the
same
exact
decision.
same players.
Right.
Every, if
And
anyone online will tell me that and debate me, no, you're crazy, because it was a first overall player in Lafreniere who the entire year people were comparing to Sidney Crosby because he was the 2-time QMJHL player of the year and all of this stuff.
But
And
the
all of this
frustrating
stuff.
part is that he can do that. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's our frustration lies because we've seen him do it. Right.
Yeah.
But
Like you
that's the
see
thing
these
with him.
flashes where he looks like this world beater, and then
Right.
it's frustrating.
Here's the thing with him, though. Here's what you do have to give Laugh credit. He, as far as the stats go, like what other player puts up the even strength scoring he does? We know he
no,
is
100%.
not getting the power play time here. Like that, you have to take that into account that he's not getting the specialty teams right now, whether he
Yeah.
deserves them or not. Like he outproduces some of the league's best stars at even strength. Like no matter
Right.
what, his defensive game is definitely down this year. That whole line's defensive game is kind of down because even some nights it's like Hope in the chat will like put it perfectly. Like the other day, like it was, they are on most nights, but then when they are off, it is
It's
colossal
Yeah.
failure.
Yeah. And
And
to piggyback off that, we're talking about how he's a great, he performs at even strength, and Laugh's initial foray into the NHL, the coach that was here at the time did him no favors.
No.
And it's not solely, of course, on David Quinn. It's not. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But you have to assume that, and I'm a teacher, right? That's what I do for my profession. I help my students, and I try to see how they learn best, and I try to tailor my lessons to fit. Not every student is the same. They're not robots. Kids learn in different ways, and it's the same thing with hockey players. Not every player is going to respond the same way to the same coaching techniques. Not every player is going to, requires the same coaching, and part of how he was failed in this organization when he first started out. You are a first overall pick. There is so much this organization has riding on you and your success for this organization that they should be doing every single thing in their power to getting you to what the mountaintop of what you can be, because of the time, the energy invested, and everything about this player and what he should mean to this franchise going forward. Whether it's Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews. These are the types of players who they rewrite the history books, right? You should do and this is not to say that Laugh is the same level of those guys, but it's to say that the same time and effort should have been put into this guy. And from the moment he stepped into Madison Square Garden, he should have been stapled to the first power play unit, stapled in the top 6. And David Quinn did this guy no favors by bouncing him around that lineup the first year, having him play with scrubs essentially at certain
scratched him a
points,
couple times too.
scratching him. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? This is the type of player you should just tell him.
Essentially the same
go
thing that
play.
they did to Capo Caco too. And
Right. The
Exactly.
same type of deal 2 years in a row where you have a guy who's picked 1, a guy who's picked 2, and a guy who's picked 1, and we're messing with their. What you say to these players, put them in the top 6, stick them on the first power play unit, go play your game. We'll figure it out from there. Don't try to be. Oh, you should be more You should be more defensive here. You should blah blah blah. You should blah blah blah. This is a big problem with the Rangers organization for years. Let the offensive guys be the offensive guys. Are they going to be the best defensive forwards? Hell no. But not every forward or player has to be that. Let them play to the strengths. Let them be the player that made you pick them second overall and first overall. Because we never saw that kind of player in Capo Caco when he was here that we saw at the World Championships. We rarely saw Laugh play with the confidence still that he played with when he was in juniors, because, again, you don't want to fit guys into holes where they don't fit. And I really feel like in the beginning of their careers here, the coach did neither of them the service that they should have been done, and that the guys picked that high should have been. You want guys to earn their spot, but sometimes you need to just put talent with talent and let it rock.
They do that though when they put him with Panarin.
Finally, they did, but
Yeah,
But
it took,
later
it
into
took
the
them long enough to
career,
do that. That's
and
the funny part.
still the power play time for Laugh doesn't come. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of what I'm trying to say here.
So now this is the thing that the Rangers kind of put themselves into, if you want to put it in perspective. Okay. So I was saying to someone the other day, when they got, let's be real here, Rangers lucked out to get that number 1 pick because of the pandemic. They did.
100%.
Oh, of course.
Right, they lucked out. Okay, that fine. You take
They
what you
never,
can get.
they never should have gotten it.
No, but look, you're right. No, you're right. Absolutely, but they got it. So now you have to deal with the card that you've been dealt with, of course. Which obviously none of us complained, of course, because it's always nice to be number 1. Would have been cool if we'd been able to get that, a year prior. That would have been nice because I would have loved to have Jack Hughes here.
I always say I would love to see the alternate path where they got 1 instead of 2 in 2019 and 2 instead of 1 in 2020, because man, that team I feel like would have been much better set up, especially down the middle. Jack Hughes and Quentin Byfield. Oh my God, please.
Oh no, absolutely.
Here's something. Here, let me just say one point here, Jay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Probably don't resign Zibanejad.
Yeah,
if they have that.
No, 100%. Oh yeah, no, and look, so if you want to kind of figure out how we got here in the first place, so I think what a lot of is rearing its ugly head now is this sort of weird complacency that a lot of the veterans who have been here for multiple regimes have been able to kind of deal with. Now, you could say that is a part of higher ups, of course, but I like to pin it on really Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider because they've been here the longest. They're one of the guys who have been through a lot of changes, and they're supposed to be the setters of the clubhouse essentially. But they really haven't. Now Mika less to an extent than Kreider because Mika, that's just Mika's personality. He's not the type of person to be rah-rah. But Chris Kreider, on the other hand, was supposed to be really the guy. Now, you look at the previous regimes, you have Jeff Gordon and John Davidson who essentially let this kind of fester. James Dolan is not totally absorbed from all this, even though he doesn't really meddle as much as he should, or as he would want to, rather, because he doesn't really understand hockey, so to speak. But a lot of what they're trying to do now, so to speak, is trying to kind of reverse course, and we just have to wait and see what happens. But it just kind of seems like right now the two things are coming to a head, because if you look at the way that some of the Rob and Dave would allude to the fact that Mika Zibanejad can't really fit in a Peter Laviolette system. Some guys on this team here who were here previously can't fit into the Peter Laviolette system. And it's funny because this is it's a higher, faster paced system than it would be for, like, let's say, a Mike Sullivan or a John Tortorella. If you notice, all of the players that are essentially really doing well are players who are either tougher nosed, like a JT Miller, who was able to do well in a slower system than John Tortorella, and similar system like Alain Vigneault.
Did you just speak about future Ranger coach John Tortorella?
You know what? I'm getting to that. I'm going to get to that. Hold on. I will get to that. So, that's a really big thing too. And look, I personally don't think Laviolette should get fired. I don't think so, because as much, and I know, Tyler, you hate the guy, but I know how much.
Sir,
I might have to take Tyler's side in this one.
But look, I will say this. I don't. If they fire him, I'm not going to be upset. But I don't think he should be the fall guy for this. But to my point, though, is that Laviolette's system is something that allows for skilled players to do a lot more. Panarin literally had his best season under Peter Laviolette. With his basically should have won the Hart Trophy last year, if we're being honest. He had his best season under Laviolette. A lot of players had really good seasons under Laviolette. So that's why I always like to say it's just sort of like a an effort or like a a lack of care issue, because a lot of these guys did play well. They're not regressing heavily outside of like Kreider presumably, but to that end though, obviously changes are going to come out this season, and I want you guys' thoughts. You basically gave me your thought, Russell, but let's say Peter Laviolette does get fired. Who's coming in here? Mike Sullivan? You want Dan Hughes to be the head guy and hire someone else to do something else? Or do we go back to good old John Tortorella yelling at Brooksy for wanting to potentially fight him in a parking lot?
Can we get Dan Boyle back too, just to yell at Brookston too?
Yeah, Brooks and Brett Segrales.
Oh my God!
That's
Whatever happened to that guy, Brett? I don't.
He's off the beat.
He went to the Isles beat. He went to the Isles beat for a while, and then I don't know where.
I think he's like writing. I don't think he works for the Post anymore.
Yeah, I mean, writing about the Islanders would make me want to quit too. So I get it.
Well, I mean, I don't blame him. Let me take a look at this. Brett Segrales.
Yeah, I need to hear Tyler's thought on the coaches first, because Tyler does not like Laviolette.
Yeah,
no,
let it out, Tyler.
I'm over this. I mean, look at tonight. I mean, I the last two nights, scratching Gabe Perreault. He's your number one prospect. You basically have nothing to play for. He is the future of the Rangers, and Laviolette is doing to him what David Quinn kind of did with Kakko and Lafreniere. It's like, what's the difference? So, I mean, I feel like he's kind of out of touch with his roster as far as this season goes. I mean, look at the abysmal power play from since March 1st. What are we operating at? 5-something%? Like it's
okay,
egregious.
Last was like a 3% clip.
Yeah, like, so please, like, no, this guy does not. He didn't want to make the adjustments either because he gave up himself, or maybe whether he threw up his hands, was like, okay, like, you guys don't want to try, I'm not going to make the proper adjustments. So no, I think I don't think you can bring him back. How could anyone return next season and be able to look at him with an ounce of respect after what's gone down this season, and just letting them flounder for the last 8 weeks?
I'm definitely not prone to disagree with you on that, because I do think that there could be some change needed. And I'll be honest, I was watching a lot of John Tortorella videos on my lunch break at work today, and I kind of missed it. I know there's a little bit of nostalgia involved, but he took no crap from his players. Now, the thing is that in that same vein of Tortorella yelling at his guys, Peter Laviolette did the same thing, but obviously they're two different types of personalities. So but just as a small defense to Laviolette, though, I can understand to a degree why he would feel defeated. And you could even, if you really want to take this to another level, you can actually go back to what Gerard Gallant said when the Rangers were eliminated by the Devils. He said that pretty much he wanted players who can, I forget what the exact quote was, but essentially he wanted players to like get in the corners, play tough. He didn't want just like superstars. He
said he wants forecheckers.
He wants forecheckers. Right, thank you. He said he wants forecheckers. And if you look at the way that series unfolded outside of games 1, 2, and 6, he was kind of right. Now granted, his scolding of Artemi Panarin was not exactly the greatest, because I thought that was pretty unfair, but then no coach is perfect. But then it kind of just makes you think, like, your point on Laviolette is absolutely 100% correct, because he had to have given up, because he stuck. Last season was a completely different story. He let the kids play. He stuck with what worked. Yeah, obviously the power play was clicking, so he didn't really have to touch much on that. But then, it just kind of seems like he gave up. You want to throw a baseball reference out there? I'll throw a baseball reference out here, and Russ can understand this. It's essentially Laviolette's season this year is essentially like what Buck Showalter's second season and final managerial season as a Met was. Basically, halfway through the season, Buck gave up.
Yep.
He did. Buck gave up. And so I think that kind of happened here. I think Pete Laviolette just had enough. And I can't blame him.
More clear that Laviolette has given up, there is no way in hell that both Othman and Perot should have been scratched today.
I agree,
The
100%.
season is already gone. Yes, of course, 1 point, whatever. It's 99% this team is going to be eliminated within the next 2 to 3 days. And the worst part about it is, sure, you want to burn a year off the Perot ELC. I get it. You know, the agents decide that. They want him in, whatever. I get it. But if he's here, play him. Like, what are we doing? Why sign this kid if you're going to scratch him? I don't want to hear the same, oh, he knows what he needs to do. Get out of here with that bull crap. Like,
because
the season is
he's
gone.
yeah.
There is no
doing
reason not to play him.
He's doing the the money ball. It's my lineup.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous at this point in the year to even like pull a line like that when at this point, if like you said before, this is one of the people that is going to be the future of this team going forward, and your message to him, like 3 games in or however long he's been here, is, you know what? I think you could take a break. No, man, play this kid out and see what he's got the last few games of the season. Like, this is crazy. It's crazy to me that it's gotten to a point where 2 of the young guys are going to be counted on are being scratched in favor of guys like Parsonen. Like, what are we doing here?
No, I definitely don't disagree. I will say this, though. I can understand why they did it. I don't agree with it, but I understand why they did it. I don't think they should have done it because at this point, what do you really have to play for? And as Hope always loves to note in the chat, but she's right on this, every one of those players who does well are all the young guys, whether it's Brett Berard, Brendan Othman, Gabe Perreault. Gabe Perreault looked phenomenal his first game. He really did. That was really a fun game to watch him kind of blossom, and you can see
his vision is incredible.
It's
He's
insane.
the only reason to watch the game right now.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. So, it was really nice to see that. I will say though, and I think this is something that I hope he works on in the off season because, it definitely, you can definitely tell he's a little raw in that, in that aspect. He's not that great of a skater. I mean, he's not a barn burner by any means, and he's a little undersized. But that's okay because he's got so much of his career left, and I think that even in that regard, whether or not that's what he was making a couple of plays here and there, but he definitely let the kid make mistakes, and it seems like they were somewhat letting him do that, but but at the same time, it's frustrating because again, how much worse can it get? Look, I think Juuso Parsonen is a good spare forward. I don't think he should be playing every day, right? But
he's a 13th. He's a 13th or 14th forward on a cup winning team.
On a cup winning team, right? He should not be playing over Othman or Perreault, which I hope with the next couple of games to end the season, whether they get eliminated, because they're definitely not getting eliminated tonight because Brett Berard just scored off of a sick pass for Matt Rempe, funny enough.
Oh, man, I'm glad you brought up that name, too. That's another guy that should never have seen the press box once he was brought up the second time.
Who, Berard or Rempe?
Berard, yeah. And
oh, no, 100%.
Another guy who, like Will Cooley, was one of the only people this year that every shift you could see the banging and crashing from him, the energy, the drive. Like, again, I would prefer a team of guys all like Will Cooley and Brett Berard after what we've seen this year. Like, those are the types of guys you need to bring into this room. Those are the types of guys that should be playing all the time.
I agree.
And, like,
100%.
when you see Berard getting scratched for, like, random 13th forward, 4th line guy, insert here, it's
Jimmy
like,
VC?
Yeah, like, I don't understand the thought process behind scratching someone like that we're not expecting Brett Berard to be like 90, 100-point player, but you're expecting him to be a nice contributor in the middle to bottom 6 on this team going forward.
20
so
goals,
why is your message to him in
assists.
this kind of season, no, we don't like what you're doing, when he's one of the only people showing effort out there every time? It's so frustrating, man.
So I definitely agree with that. You can ask anyone here. There was a couple players, or at least in the chat, there's a couple of players that I've always kind of been fans of. Adam Edstrom was one of them because I got to see him play when he first came here from Sweden, and the other's Brett Berard, And I think, we always say that Berard has like this little motor in him, and I think it's perfect for what this team is and what Chris Drury wants. I think that, whether it's going to be Laviolette or whether it's going to be another coach, well, let's just jump right into it. What do you think should be the next Rangers coach, Tyler?
I mean, I kind of have a list, but I mean, it's kind of dependent on who gets fired. But I mean, it's also the age-old debate: do you go the retread or do you go off the board a bit? I mean, I know you two aren't super prone to college hockey, but I'm wondering, when's a guy like David Carl at a University of Denver going to get a,
Heard that
get a
name a
look
lot.
in the NHL? He has done ridiculous, as a head coach since taking over that program. I think he's had over 150 wins in 6 years, which is insane. And I know I believe they lost in double OT tonight in the Frozen Four tourney. So I don't know what his contract status is like, but I wonder if that's a guy who eventually would garner interest from NHL teams. But if you're talking retreads, I mean,
So, real quick,
I've always wanted.
before you
Oh,
go into retreads, I want to ask you
sure,
this because you seem
sure,
to
sure.
know more
Go for it.
about college hockey than I do. So, what would make, and you said his name was David, you just said it, and
David
I just
Carl.
like David Carl. Okay, so I've heard that name being bounced a
He is
lot.
also who coached the World Junior team. He's
Okay,
he's coached it the last 2 years.
so what would make this wouldn't be the first time the Rangers would potentially dip into the college ranks, of course, because that's where David Quinn came from.
Right, right,
What do you think would separate him? Because David Quinn essentially had a very similar resume. He coached at,
right.
U for a while. He coached the junior teams. He actually coached professionally with the Lake Erie Monsters for Colorado. Actually was somewhat of an assistant coach at times in the NHL for a bit. Did a lot of stuff with the junior teams. So what do you think would make him, and I'm not to say that, he's like David Quinn, but the background is very similar. What would you
Yeah,
think
he's
would make
super
him
young too.
different?
He is super young. He's super young too. He's going to be 36 this season. So I mean, he would be the youngest coach in the NHL if he were to garner interest. But I mean, I just think he's done such a good job with that program. We're
Okay.
making it a consistent contender each year. So I mean,
Hmm.
he obviously has a pulse on how to coach young players. I mean, I don't want to say it's you know you would never know if it would end up like David Quinn as well. I mean, because I think a lot of people thought he would be able to develop young players as well because he had such a stacked team at in Boston University. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, as far as retreads go, my guy, I say him in the chat all the time. My guy, I wonder when a guy like Jay Woodcroft is going to get another look. The former Edmonton Oilers coach
Hmm.
before Knobloch got out there. It's kind of interesting to me that he got fired, and I feel like you just never hear his name anywhere. But he did a pretty good job coaching that team for all the faults that they had on that
Hmm.
roster. I thought he did a tremendous job with that roster.
That's fair. I could see that. That wouldn't be a bad hire if they were to go that route.
Yeah,
I'm
but then
just
you
a
also
little
got to see
skeptical.
what.
You know.
Yeah, yeah. You also have to see what would happen with a guy like Andrew Burnett out of Nashville. Do you put a lot of blame? It's kind of interesting. Nashville is in a very similar boat as the Rangers. They had all these expectations, and they they probably had a worse season than the Rangers after all those contracts they gave out in free
Hmm.
agency. But do you put that at the fault of Brunette, or is it roster construction? Is it fit? All of it. But those would be if I were making a list, my I would Carl would be the third because you never know with a college coach if he would be one, if he's even interested. He might be very happy where he is right now and just still wanting to get some some more coaching experience in the college ranks. But
Right.
that is definitely someone who I think is going to be an NHL coach one day.
Okay. Russ, who do you think should be the next coach of this team if Laviolette gets fired?
Yeah, so this is a tough one, honestly. I can't say I have all the college hockey knowledge that Tyler and some of our other members of Blue Seats do. I've heard this guy David Carl's name before a lot. I mean, his
Yeah,
track record
same.
speaks for itself. So I mean, if they did decide to go outside of the retreads, they decide they want to try something new. I mean, that's the first guy I would pretty much give a call. It seems like he's the next one in line of all these types of guys at that level that deserves a shot. But again, you hope it turns out in a much better way than the last time we went the college route with David Quinn, right?
Yeah.
Now Chris Drury is the X factor here, right? What does he want? We know that if it was up to Chris Drury, he would go to Pittsburgh and kidnap. He would. Oh my God, Mike Sullivan? Yeah, I don't know why I was blanking on the name, but we know if it was up to Chris Drury, he would go to Pittsburgh, handcuff Mike Sullivan to the inside of his car and drive him back to New York and force the Penguins to do whatever they did to release him from his deal. Now, could Mike Sullivan get fired? The Penguins didn't have a great year. It's very possible. And if
2 years
Mike
in a row.
Sullivan does get fired, this coaching search is over before it began. I hope you all realize that.
100%.
If Mike Sullivan does not get fired, and look, not everyone's going to agree with this. Probably not everyone, even in our own group, is going to agree with this. But at this point in time, with the effort we've seen this year, guys giving up on each other, people not playing to their potential, people, just all of this nonsense that this team went through this year, God, it really seems like they need the hard ass. I really, I half joked about it before, but I really would not hate it. And it's not going to be for a long time because he wears his welcome out fairly quickly. But I really wouldn't hate if Tortorella came back here for a second stint. I'm sorry. I know that's kind of like a generic answer, but it just seems like he's the type of coach that this iteration of the team needs. Just someone who's going to be no nonsense, no bullshit. Go play out on that ice with full effort or you're not playing.
Yeah, no, listen. Like I said, in terms of, the coach from Denver, I wouldn't be against it, fresh name in the room. But one of the guys I think before I go into essentially my retreads that I think should probably get a look is Dan Muse. Because, granted he's part of the current coaching staff, right? And he may not be looked as highly upon amongst, everyone here, but at least on Rangers Twitter at least. But you have to remember something about him that I was very impressed with when I saw that they hired him was that he was essentially part of the whole architecture of, I think he did some work with Carolina, I think at one point where I saw a video with him where he was breaking down just like a forecheck, essentially doing the same forecheck that Peter Laviolette employs. And there was just something so impressive about just the way he was explaining things. And, he seems like a tactician, so to speak. Obviously when you're an assistant coach, you don't exactly, you're not doing everything, you can because you're only being an assistant coach. But I think if he was able to get the reins and surround himself with, like-minded people, then I think he'd be okay because he seems like the kind of guy, you look at a guy like John Cooper, for example, who bided his time in the AHL, was able to kind of, smart as a button, because, he went to law school, but I feel like Dan Muse is cut from that cloth. And I feel like that would be something that would benefit this team because he's not the, part of the old guard. He's not a retread, but he's smart. And I think it's kind of similar to the way, again, baseball reference. I guess that's my only other frame of reference that I'm thinking about it. So when
If
the
you
Mets
can't
hired,
tell, me and JL love baseball.
yes, I love hockey, but baseball is my one, and hockey's 1A. As much as I hate this team right now or I dislike them, I still have a very big love for the New York Rangers. But anyways, so when the Mets hired Carlos Mendoza last year, right, they brought in John Gibbons, former Toronto Blue Jays manager, to be his bench coach. And that works out because although Mendoza may not have had the experience, John Gibbons is what counteracts that. And I think that's a very solid move for a team to make. So you see it a lot in other sports too. Like it happens in hockey too. Like, they'll hire like an older former head coach to, be, an assistant coach or like a defensive coach or whatever, or someone who's looking at, like, look at Lindy Ruff, for example, when he became, when he was kept on the staff for David Quinn, Lindy Ruff ended up getting him back into the coaching business, and he was able to secure a coaching staff. I think it was at the New Jersey Devils, if I remember that correctly. So,
Lindy Ruff.
well, I mean,
Yeah,
we all saw how that went.
How'd that go for them? How'd that go for
It
them?
went,
how'd that
went
go,
pretty well
Jill?
for the first, the first season. It didn't go too badly for them. I'll say that. But
Actually, a
Well,
better
that's-
question is, how is it going for the Sabres right now?
well, okay. The thing about them is
They have their own issues.
that you think okay, I'll just put this in perspective right now. So my buddy's a Buffalo Sabres fan. You think we have it bad with organizational dysfunction? Go up to Buffalo and tell me that we don't have it good here. But anyways, but but all this to say that I think that if they decide to, not go the retread route or not go the college route, I think Dan Muse is perfect for this because the guys already know him. He's smart, he's knowledgeable of the system, and I think that if he can bring somebody in on the coaching staff, not named Phil Housley, who can be, I know Tyler definitely likes him. That's not, someone that's like either an experienced coach or someone that can kind of counteract that experience for Muse's, I guess, rawness. I think that'd be good. Another one, obviously, Mike Sullivan. That's always been the top of the list. Mike Sullivan was the coach of Team USA for the Four Nations, and that's a given. Like you said, Russ, if Mike Sullivan gets fired, the coaching search, like I think if he gets fired before Laviolette gets canned,
over, or as we like to say, it's Jover.
It's Jover, right? We already know that's going to be the guy, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But
Wait,
and then
guys, I can't believe we didn't think about this one. We're talking about retreads. You guys don't want to see what like Elaine Vigneault's up to, guys?
Oh,
no,
get
I'm good.
get
I'm
off
good.
this podcast right now.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm totally joking. I really hope no one.
You
thinks
want
I'm
to talk about a
disconnect
guy
right
that you want to talk about a guy that wore out his welcome? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a team. Outside of this group, I don't think I've ever seen a team or just the whole group of people just give up on each other. But I guess that was also by design.
Before this season, the team I will forever until I'm proven wrong again. 15-16 was the most frustrating season.
Oh, they were terrible that year.
That is the worst 100-point team I have ever watched.
They were.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
Oh yeah.
Hank basically carried that team. That was that was the season where they had they had just gotten eliminated in the conference final against Tampa. They thought it was a good idea to trade Carl Hagelin for Emerson Edom for some reason, and the team was slow, sluggish. Dan Boyle was there.
Emerson, who?
I forgot about that trade.
Emerson Edom. I don't even think he scored a goal as a Ranger.
I don't think he did either.
He had one cool playoff goal with Anaheim, and the Rangers like, that's our guy.
And if I remember correctly, I think the defenseman he did that against was Jacob Trouba. Against Winnipeg.
You know what it was? It was.
It was Jacob Trouba.
Wait, are you telling me that Jacob Trouba got walked? Wow.
He was still
so bad. So
yeah. Like he was still good. And the funny thing is, he was still good at Winnipeg. He was also still pretty good here for a little.
People thought Trouba was better at the time than they thought he was carrying Morrissey at the time.
Yes,
and
yes.
Now it's proven to be actually the opposite.
No, it's
Morrissey
the opposite.
Being Trouba.
Well, I will say this though, as I stare at my Jacob Trouba home captaincy jersey that I have hanging up on here because I don't have any space in my closet. Trouba for the first 2 years here was good. I can't get on that. He was just signed for too much money, and also the reason why they did that was because they did not know what they had in Adam Fox. Actually, it was before they traded for Adam Fox. So I think if they had already known they were going to get Fox, I don't think Trouba comes here. Or maybe if he does, his contract was far less than what it should have been. But anyways, in terms of coaches, then obviously, I think John Tortorella. I was watching clips of him earlier today. I think this is exactly what this team would need in the short term. And if we're trying to win now, then I think that will be good. And look, and we'll conclude with this. Okay. And I just want to say this just to kind of put it out there. And I know, I understand, and then maybe this is the optimist in me. You can throw tomatoes at me if you want. As gloomy as it looks, right? It's not as bad as it seems. Okay? It just all depends on how they respond, the team, the Rangers. Okay? You could be like
I agree with
Buffalo. You could be like Buffalo and not have any prospects. I mean, yeah, they have like so much talent on that team, but you think Dolan is dysfunctional. Take a look at Terry Pagula. Having been there and seen the reaction of just everybody, it's bad. Like, it's like Jeff Wilpon Mets bad, so to speak, or Hal Steinbrenner Yankees bad. Sorry, I'll relate that to you, Tyler.
Oh,
But
shot across the bow to end things. Oh my
well,
god!
I mean, am I wrong, Tyler? Am I wrong? But they're winning though. So they're
I'm gonna.
you know it was coming at some point, but
Yeah, this is what happens when you go on a podcast with Mets fans.
well, we would have had Rob here. Rob would have defended you more, but that's okay. We all love each other. It's not as bad as it seems. And while we are all very frustrated, and this season's not going to turn out the way that we want to, the Rangers have a lot of prospects, not only player-wise, but also cap space-wise. And players are going to come off the books. Money's going to be brought back. And while we're in the moment where it feels like doom and gloom, this was actually the period of time that it was supposed to be sort of not great in terms of like money and all that. But now they're out of it. Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel are out there. If Mika's
Look,
Chris
you
Chris
already
Kreider.
know I've been on the Connor McDavid train for as long as humanly possible.
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I
those
don't
guys-
think he makes it to FA. But that's a topic.
Yeah,
for
you never see that kind of player hit market. That player,
Right.
that kind of player is traded and then signed, or re-signs with his team, because hockey players like to be where their stuff is.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I will say this though. Again, baseball comes to mind, and I don't think you're gonna like this, Tyler. A lot of people thought Juan Soto was gonna be that kind of guy, but he did. He made it to free agency. And I know it's a little more lucrative with baseball, but
just a little bit more lucrative.
Yeah, I mean, when your agent is Scott Boras, the terrorist.
Well, yeah, that's fair. Of course. Well, that's fair. Also, my reaction was Alexei Lafreniere just scored a nice goal. It's 8-2, by the way.
Good.
Right now.
Good job, guys.
They could have done this last night.
Good job.
But
you could have done this all season.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
it's literally the same personnel, which is why it's so bothersome.
This is why we have trust issues. But I again, I'm just reiterating, it's not as bad as it seems. And look, it's not great now, don't get me wrong, but it can be fixed. Okay, and Kreider's going to get moved. A lot of other moves are going to happen. I'm confident Drury can make, I hope, that he can make the moves because he is aware of what's up. He can make the right moves. You could tell just the JT Miller trade, the way they've drafted in the last couple of years, they're trying to turn this team into a more difficult team to play against.
Can I make a point on that?
Yes.
Because I know we were talking about that in the chat. I know we were talking about that exactly, like what I had said earlier. Exactly. Like you can see what Drury wants to do. I just don't think Laviolette's the coach to execute that plan. Like Drury clearly has a plan. He has a particular mold of player that he keeps targeting. Like they definitely want to be this ridiculously hard team to play against. They want to be able to defend. They want to be able to score. I just think the current system in place is not beneficial to the players on the roster. And even if they continue to turn over the roster and if they keep Laviolette, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that's why you seriously have to consider the change, because if Drury is making this roster a particular way, he needs to make sure that he has the coach to be able to communicate with him and that they are, on the same exact page together.
Well, that was the thing. That was the whole situation with Laviolette. Also, I kind of think that I don't want to say that Laviolette was sort of a consolation prize because I know he wanted Sullivan that offseason. But I think that was kind of the thing that he prided in with Laviolette is that he's able to communicate. And they've both been in lockstep, which is, again, I don't think that's why he's going to get fired. But at the same token, with how disastrous this season has gone, I could see it happening. And like I said, I would agree with you and I wouldn't be totally upset. But just to finish my final point, which thank you for adding that, by the way, I almost forgot to mention that. It's not as doom and gloom. This team has a lot of talent, and I think they'll be contenders again next season. Will they win the President's Trophy? Probably not. But you still have Panarin, you have JT Miller, you have Will Cooley. You got a lot of kids who were able to get a little bit onto their system. And look, even a guy like Matt Rempe can make a bit of a difference. He looks really good this year. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. Brett Berard is coming into his own. You get rid of Kreider, you got Othman and Berard to take that spot. You can have Parsonen and Brodzinski as your extras. Panarin's going to continue to play well, and then you just ship Mika and Miller together, and then you'll have something there. It's not totally terrible. And then Adam Fox hopefully gets some sort of procedure done on his knee. So while it's bleak now, they'll be fine next year, I think. Oh my gosh! Did they just score another goal? I'm sorry. It's 9-2 right now. I'm sorry. Anyways.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Here, let me. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Say what you got to say. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say. I was gonna say. Let's not also leave out what a just I don't even know the word to describe, like Sam Rosen's last season, and this is the product he gets to call.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's
terrible.
I know. I was thinking about that all last night.
This is what Sam had to see and watch and call during his last season, and they did the game with Sam and JD the other night, and it's a shame that this team turned me off so much this year that I didn't even see the appeal in watching that. It's literally gotten to that point. And maybe if I grew up in that era, like some of the people in our chat have, I would have appreciated that more and watched it just for that. But I didn't grow up in the Sam and JD era. I've been Sam and Joe since as much as I can remember. And it's embarrassing that this is what they did for Sam's last hurrah.
What is your guys' favorite Sam Rosen call in your fandom?
Oh,
Rangers win. Easy, because I was at that game, but then I was coming as we were collectively chanting "Let's go Rangers" and yelling at the Penguins fans for embarrassing themselves at MSG. I heard it on my phone, and I just I said that's it. Like that's like a goat call right there.
Yeah.
Which also just kind of makes me sad that we don't get the local broadcast for all the playoffs, which I'm not really a fan of that, but that easy my favorite call.
And for me, honestly, we've heard it so many times. We've heard it in so many arenas. We've heard it on no matter where they are, but there will never be a more iconic line than just the simple "it's a power play goal." Like it's so ingrained that even when Sam's gone, I want to have like a little recording with a button that I could just hit next to me when I'm watching the Rangers. That that was easy button. Give me one of those with just Sam saying it's a power play goal, so I can play that forever whenever they score a power play goal, because broadcasters have these lines that they like. Gary Cohen has "it's out of here." Sam Rosen has a power play goal. Just iconic, man. It's iconic stuff, and I'm gonna miss the guy incredibly.
Well,
agreed.
Just your luck. They tried something out the other day, which I would have heard last night if they had scored a power play goal. But apparently, similar to what the Sabres did with Rick Jeanneret, where they had a clip of him coming in after he passed away, they have a clip after they score a power play goal where Sam goes, "It's a power play goal." Joe Tollison tweeted it when they were playing at the Garden the other day against Tampa Bay. When they scored, they played a clip of "It's a power play goal" right before he makes the
That's
goal.
Pretty cool.
Which I think is pretty cool.
That's got to stay.
100%. And I hope they keep that. Tyler, final thoughts, or favorite call, and then final thoughts.
Ooh, there's so many. Now Now, I've only been a fan since 2012, so I don't have too many of the iconic ones, but there was one just lives rent free in my head for some reason. So it was the first game out of the lockout in 2013, and I was so jacked that hockey was coming back because I had just gotten really into the team, and then the lockout happened. So one, I'm happy I stuck with it because this is just what the Rangers, just with the fans and Twitter and your guys with the blog, like what it's brought to me has been
Mhm.
just super fulfilling. And but sorry, to get back to the call. Sorry for going on that
Yep,
tangent,
you're
but
good.
the uh, the one that sticks in my head is Boston was on a power play. They just do like a a shot down low to Chara. Chara deflects it over to David Krejci, and Lundqvist makes this just ridiculous save. And it's like the first real one out of the lockout, and just like Sam, just you could feel the vein almost popping in his in his sort of like save. What a save by Lundqvist! And it just I. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm ready to run through a wall for this. But like that call, whatever reason, just a save by Lundqvist call, just something about it, just because that's when I was really watching the Rangers, was when Hank was really in his prime. Just Saved by Lundqvist calls just live rent free in my head.
Well, that's awesome. That's though. How many of those have we heard from Sam? Saved by Lundqvist. Where they didn't exactly deserve to win, and Sam kind of highlighted that, but just with his enthusiasm. So that's definitely and I remember that. I remember that save too. Funny enough, because I was like really glued to the TV that day, because I was also also stoked that hockey came back as well. But anyways, I think that pretty much puts a wrap on this. I know we kind of went a little long, but it's always good to talk hockey with the boys, of course, here. Um,
Always.
Oh,
right now, Dave would be here and he would say, "I have to go to bed, JL." Dave is. So,
yeah, not
um,
us. We're actual night owls in this in
yeah,
this
no,
trio.
that's true.
We're
Yeah,
spry young men right now.
We're
yes.
not we're not filing for AARP.
No, not yet. Although I think I'm the oldest one here, so I think I'm almost there because I just
What are
turned
you again?
32 the other day. I'm 32. I literally turned 32 like this past Tuesday.
Oh,
So
okay. So,
yeah,
Russ, are you a '93 birthday as well?
I'm a 94
he's
birthday.
94.
Okay. All right. So I'm smack in the middle. I'm September of '93.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
so
yeah,
I'm
basically
April
that's
and he's September. So yeah, me and Tyler are gonna go apply for AARP, and Russ are gonna continue playing on the playground, with
yeah,
the children.
yeah.
But anyways, thank you for everyone who's taken the time out to listen. Thank you, Russ and Tyler, for coming on and having this little vent session. Hope to have you guys more on in the summer. Definitely enjoyed doing this. So
Anytime, man.
what we're gonna do is I'm gonna turn the next couple of podcasts. You know, more than likely that they're gonna get eliminated. I'm gonna turn these into more event sessions for some of us in the chat who want to contribute, who have wanted to be on the podcast, along with obviously Dave and Rob, of course, which also uh, best wishes to Dave and Rob. They're feeling under the weather, so my best to them. Hoping they feel better. Dave is, dealing with some stuff with his, eyes and all that, and Rob is under the weather as well. So best to them, you know. So that's what we're gonna try and do at least for the summer. If I'm not sitting here at 3 in the morning talking about Martin St. Louis. Anyways, that is it for this episode. And Tyler and Russ, thank you again. We'll definitely have you guys on again soon. And this has been live from the Blue Seats. Let's go Rangers.